party, the underground guitar party. Today we're talking about amps, specifically what's the real difference? Catalyst, solid state, Blues Deluxe, tube. I mean, is there really a big difference? It's $1,000 compared to $320 to $399. Is that really worth the price difference? So that's what we're going to answer today. Guys, if you're tired of watching 1,000 videos and you just want to hear the difference, I've got that for you today. I've gone ahead and recorded this a couple of really cool ways. Hold on a second, I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I brought the things that recorded it. You guys, when I've been watching through this, and the whole purpose of making this was when I was watching through to determine if I wanted one of these tube amps to go alongside my solid state. I've always had solid state amps. I've never had a tube amp. And I got a new guitar lately and I was like, man, I really want a Fender amp to go with my Fender guitar. And I wanted something else. And out of all the tube amps, I chose the Blues Deluxe. I really like this one. There's a couple things about it, and this is not an overview of all the amps. This is actually not even really going to go into any of their features. More videos on that coming later. This is really going to share with you how it sounds different. Now, when I went and tested these two amps, I tested them in a Guitar Center, and at the volumes I was willing to listen at Guitar Center, I couldn't really tell much of a difference between them. I knew that the Fender amp, the Blues Deluxe, sounded different, but in what way? And was it only different because the modeling amp can sound like many different amps? These were the things that I didn't really get to test out and figure out until I got here home in my studio. So I want to share with you how we recorded them. Number one, you're going to hear different sounds, and I'm not even going to hold it back from you. I'm going to share with you right on the clips when you're listening what input source we came through. In just a second, I'm going to show you the setup and the behind the scenes, and that's actually going to be picked up using the on-camera audio. Right? Which means that a camcorder like this, which generally has better on-camera audio than your camera. If you guys don't have camcorders and you're not used to it, just trust me. Lots of times the on-camera microphone is much better than what you'll find in your hybrid mirrorless camera. I don't care if you've got Sony, Panasonic, generally speaking, it's better in the camcorders. What about something that you might have for just a couple $100s? You can pick these up. This is the Pocket Go 2 or the DJI Pocket 2. Anyways, a really cool just handheld gimbal camera, and it's got an interesting feature. It's got the ability to do that spatial 360 audio because it's got four different microphones on it, and you can put it somewhere in the room and it'll capture reflections, it'll capture sound from all over the place. And then finally, I also recorded using the on-mic 14.5 millimeter condenser microphones on the Tascam Portacapture X8. Now, I really like the Tascam Portacapture X8. I've done several videos on my other channel specific to this about how I didn't care for the build quality, but I have always liked the audio quality, specifically the microphones. Even though they're plastic, I would like them to be nicer. I think they sound great. So I've recorded the way you would hear this with these three different input sources for you to take a listen to. It's going to be quite a bit of fun. So let's get that started by talking about the Circle Looper. I'm going to go ahead and roll the behind the scenes. So let's bring it. Great. As you see me getting ready to set up over there, I've got the Circle Looper. This is by Donner. It's a cheap looper. It's got some built-in effects specific to stereo, drums that are in here, which are nice. If you've got a stereo channel, it'll go out. As well as I've got the entire loop brought in, and I'm just going to play down a little bit of a lead track over top of it. So we're back at it. You got a chance to hear how we did it. You got a chance to see behind the scenes, and I hope you like that little real quick lick. Now, one thing I found out real quickly was that 100 watts on the Catalyst is not the same as 40 watts on the tube amp. It just isn't. In fact, this tube amp right here, the Blues Deluxe, gets so loud that I just can't even. I only got as loud as I dared to get, and that was about a 4.5 to 5 on the volume meter. This has an audio taper, so that's kind of the middle of the audio taper. So I guess it's probably at the time you hit 4 to 5, you're probably pushing 60% of its volume based on that audio taper. But in this video, I wasn't able to go any louder than that. I didn't go any louder than that. And in order to get that loudness repeated over here on the catalyst, I needed to be at 100 watts on the back solid state selector for your attenuation guide, and all the way up on my master, channel, and gain. So I had more room to push the Blues Deluxe, but the catalyst was already really at its max. There's something else that happens too. Maybe you didn't hear it there, but the Blues Deluxe is quite a bit more articulate and responsive, whereas the catalyst is not as dynamic. So that's what I'm talking about here. The Blues Deluxe, whether or not you heard a difference in character, I did hear brightness and chime in the Blues Deluxe. But one thing that was definitely present was that it was much more dynamic. The difference between its highs and lows was a greater range than it was over here on the catalyst. And that makes sense. You've got tubes, which is an organic analog process, compared to solid state, which is digital. Okay, it's time to run the next one. Before we give you just the room tone direct from the Tascam, I want to give you one more interesting sound from the Pocket Go, or the Pocket 2, that you may not have thought. There's 3D audio. Check it out. Okay, we're back, and I'll bet you never would have thought that such an interesting kind of sound would have come from just a little consumer level grade camera like this. But I got to tell you, those 4 microphones did a really great job of collecting the echo from all around the room and really giving you some sparkle. In that instance, I really think that it showcased the fact that the Blues Deluxe has quite a bit of sparkle and brightness in it. That's just what it is, and it showed even more of the dynamics. In this room, we're about a 12 by 15 room here, and there's just quite a bit of echo, and you can hear that. On the other hand, one of the things that I'm beginning to notice as we're looking through here is that these are both set up to be a flat EQ, and here's why. The circle looper, although I laid down that track earlier, if you haven't figured it out, or if you didn't know already, your effects loop on the Catalyst is not the same as the effects loop on the Blues Deluxe. The Blues Deluxe right here has a true effects loop, which you would expect, which what you're thinking of, meaning that that effects loop is separate from its power out, right? So any of the effects that you have on here set, such as your EQ and everything else, it doesn't make any difference because it will not pick up, this looper will not put out any of the effects on the onboard controls like reverb or drive. It won't do any of that, which means that what it's putting out here is just a signal as it came in from the guitar, as it recorded from the guitar, that gets put into the Blues Deluxe, and that's what you hear. That's what we would expect, right? And that's what I would expect. Now, I've been using the Catalyst 100 for quite some time now, and I already know that that's not how the Catalyst 100 effects loop works. In fact, you're going to get quite a bit of your reverb and quite a bit of your other effect, although it seems to be attenuated slightly, whatever that additional effect is, it's going to be in the loop. So this is not post-loop. This is not before the loop. I think they describe it as pre-loop in the instruction manual. I wouldn't consider it that at all. I would consider it just as good as putting this in front of your guitar pedal before the amp, but maybe a little bit in between. It's a modified something. It's kind of hard to pin down. And because of that, all of the tones have to be set to this amp to be flat. Because here, it's already flat coming out. It's basically just the recorded input, whatever that was. But over here, it would be whatever you were putting out. So if you had your EQ set in any kind of way, you would hear it. And in order to properly evaluate these amps, I set this amp to flat, just like this amp is already set to flat, because I can't affect any of the inputs or outputs. So that being the case, that might explain a little bit of what you're hearing. And if that didn't do enough to get you thinking, it's time to hear what the Tascam captured. So let's go ahead and roll that now. are back. Okay, what did you think? You heard the Tascam. You've heard all of them kind of back to back. We kind of played a little bit here and there, but the Tascam itself was picking up with these 14.5 millimeter small diaphragm condensers about 2 feet in front of both cabinets. They were set at an AB configuration, so it's 100 degrees wide stereo separation, and it was able to pick up a little bit of that articulation from the outside reverberations and things like that. I think it sounded really great. Again, in this particular instance, the Blues Deluxe itself, articulate and responsive. The Catalyst, quite a bit more flat. Now, some of you may be saying to yourself right now, some of you might be asking, why didn't I just go ahead and EQ this so it sounded like that? And part of the whole process was to not make them sound alike. Yes, I couldn't EQ the Catalyst with the looper because it is outside of all of the built-in effects. It's a separate thing, which is fine because we wanted a natural tone. That's what we were going for. However, I could have EQ'd the Catalyst to sound very, very similar to the Blues Deluxe. But what point would that have served? Then we would have had recordings that sounded X, Y, A, B, 1, 2, 3. They would have sounded the same. We would not have heard the difference. And that's, I think, what we're really getting to right here. For me, and how I hope that this video shares in the conversation, adds into the conversation, is that while recording, we were able to see in 3 different microphone setups, none of which were exceptionally professional. It was something that you or anyone else might have so that you could hear on consumer level devices. It's not like I mic'd this over here with my Neumann. I didn't do that. I went ahead and mic'd this with consumer level stuff that you could get in 3 different microphones that you might have, from an on-camera camcorder sound to a small handheld pocket device that has 360 audio, to a little bit more prosumer level recorder, so that we could actually hear what we were getting. So what my conclusion for all of this is, yeah, all day long, I do prefer the Blues Deluxe reissue, period. I didn't know that I would prefer it when I was in Guitar Center. Again, because when I was practicing with these and comparing them side by side with the same guitars, I just didn't feel comfortable pushing this to the volume it would have needed to be for me to hear the differences. I'm saying it wasn't until I got loud where I started to hear the difference in the Blues Deluxe, and it was a serious difference. There's a warmth, there's an organic feeling to it, there's a breakup, there's quite a few things that happen to the tone that is very alive, right? And I've heard different reviewers talk about that, but I've never really seen it demonstrated. And I think it's because lots of times they try to mic it or give you the direct out so it sounds perfect. And the reality, we want to hear what's different. So what about the Catalyst? Where does that come in? Well, there's a lot of stuff the Catalyst can do that the Blues Deluxe just can't do. However, the number one thing that it can't do is it can sound like other amps. So yes, I could have EQ'd it to sound like this, but more important, it's got the effects built in, which really just make it extraordinarily versatile and at literally a third the cost, right at a third of the price. It doesn't get as loud, and when it does get loud, the amp suffers from beginning to sound lifeless. I've got to say, when you compare the two at loud volumes, I just don't think that it sounds as good. But it doesn't sound bad by any means. Actually, prior to having the Blues Deluxe in the house, I thought that the amp sounded great. It really only sounds different in comparison to the Blues Deluxe. But I can't play with the Blues Deluxe at nighttime because it's just too loud. Even when it's turned down, it's still too loud. And by the time you get it turned down enough so that you can play with it, you lose the beautiful organic depth that the amp brings because you can't push it to where it will break up or where it will begin to really breathe and catch its own stride. So which one is for you? I'm going to answer that question right now. If you're making YouTube videos, if you aren't doing gigging that requires any kind of miking of the amps and you just want to plug in the direct outs over here, plus the integration with your iPad through a USB so that you can edit stuff on the Catalyst Edit app. We didn't even talk about that. Make this a much more versatile amp. It really beats the Blues Deluxe all day long. Where it fails is in that organic tone when you start to blast it. So if you're going to gig and you really want that unique live sound, this is going to give it to you every single time, but it's going to be loud. The reality is you probably need both of them, right? Because if you're gigging, you probably need this for those times where you can plug this out through and use this as a powered cabinet from what this is putting out, which is really cool. Or vice versa, you could actually plug this in and use its effects through this tube amp too and have both of them. At that point in time, you're gonna have so much sound, you won't know what to do with yourself. In any event, I thought that this was a really great result. I was happy to see it, and I'm excited about the next couple of videos that I've got coming up. I'm gonna have a review of each of these in their independent forms for you. And I hope that you enjoy that. Please leave some comments down below. Let me know what you'd like for me to check out on these specific in a review as it comes up. And I want to thank you guys for watching. I'm Rob with Underground Guitar Party. Go find me over at undergroundguitarparty.com. If you'd like to have your pictures showcased here with these other guys, go ahead and send them to me at jam@undergroundguitarparty.com, and we'll put you in the end credit scroll. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Rock on.